Hello, it's Rumor reporting to you randomly from my coffee table because, well, it's really cold in my office right now where my tarot table is, so I don't know. I just thought I would change it up and talk to you all from here. What brings me here today, though, is a video response to Juli at Peekaboo Rose's recent reimagining of the Hush Tarot, which fascinated me. And before the video was even over, I don't even think it was halfway through, I was already running to grab my deck and pull out the cards and start like flipping through them and start thinking through like, oh, what would I do? What changes would I make? And it just became such a fun exercise. And I did not sort it right in that one sitting, but all the next day as I'm trying to get work done, I found myself grabbing the deck again and just like to the side, taking breaks from my editing to glance over and kind of move the puzzle pieces around as I saw it all of a sudden coming together. And it was by no means an easy exercise. I am not the first person to say it, and this is not the first time I have said it here at my own channel, that this deck does not follow a standard Rider-Waite-Smith system, even though it seemingly purports to. The guidebook can try to make those associations, but the fact of the matter is this is pre-existing art. And so it was after the fact wedged into these traditional meanings. And maybe some of these images are newer. I feel like certain ones like this just does seem to, for Five of Swords, it just seemed like too tarot-like. I find it hard to believe that this artist happened to just make this image of this guy holding 5 swords. But, you know, I could be wrong. And, oh, he's not holding 5 swords, as it were. He's holding 3. He's got one in his hand, and then the other one is there. Or like this for the 4 of Swords. Like, those do look to me like they were probably made to fill in some gaps, perhaps, for this deck. I honestly don't know. I did not do my research. So, whatever. I talked about this deck in my VR to Lisa Pepez for top 10 intuitive decks because of this issue with the mismatch between images and the meanings as I know them anyways. And it does, as a result, lend itself really well as an intuitive deck. This is beautiful artwork that can just be taken on its own. So I really had let go of this idea of having these card titles and numerological and suit assignments. But then I see Juli's video, and like I said, I just kind of became obsessed with the idea of like, well, if there are some cards that would work well for others, because some that she was showing, I was like, oh yeah, that's a brilliant choice for that card. It actually looks like it could have been made for that. So I don't know. I wanted to go through it on my own, and I did watch Juli's video, but after a while, once I had grabbed my deck, I was deliberately not watching very closely as to her selections and rationales because I wanted to first go through it all with my own logic applied to it, and then, you know, went back to the video after the fact to see where I might have had some overlap with Juli and where we might have had some differences. And, you know, as could be expected, there was a little bit of both. This is a pretty subjective practice, right? And even though there are those standard meanings we've all come to learn, I think that we still develop our own personal relationships with the tarot, with the deck as a whole, and with the individual cards. There might be some associations that we make with them based on our personal experience, based on our personal understanding of a meaning, or maybe how a card has repeatedly come up time to time from one reading to another. You know, whatever that is, whatever that accumulation of wisdom that we acquire with time and practice, we come to have our own understanding of the cards as well. Maybe I'm getting into all of that just as my disclaimer that you might look at some of my choices today and think like, what? I don't look at that card that way at all. And there are some in here, honestly, that I will be the first to admit it's a stretch for me to make it that card. It's not a perfect exercise here. Ultimately, I only have the 78 cards to work with, and in going through and kind of sorting out the more obvious ones, there were those remaining few where it was sort of, a little bit harder pressed to determine where they would fit into the whole sequence of things. I think I actually started with the court cards first because I felt like there were some that more obviously lent themselves to that, and it was just sort of this like process of elimination from there. But regardless, it was so much fun. I just felt like I really bonded with my deck in a way I had not yet, even though I love this deck and I have used it a lot. This just has like tied me to it even more closely. It's made it more personal. I feel like I understand these cards and I know the artwork better than ever after putting so much focus into this. So thank you, Juli, for being the prompt for me to do this. I guess I'll just get started. So, put that bag aside. Now, please forgive my lack of artistry on the cards that I did modify. Not all of them were. As you can see, the Fool, this is the original one. But for the perfectionists out there, the more artistically inclined than myself, please forgive me if it drives you batty, like having to see where I might have changed a symbol for a suit or written in the titles with just my own printing, nothing fancy. And I used Sharpie for my modifications. I used a bronze metallic Sharpie specifically to color over the existing titles and numbers and suit symbols. And then I used a black fine tipped Sharpie pen to write or draw in the new labels. So yeah. Okay, so as you see, we got the Fool. I don't know, I didn't really take an issue with this one. I can see how, it works well enough. Same with the Magician. So the first card to be modified, this was originally the Queen of Cups. I promise you, I will not remember what all the cards were originally. I didn't take note of that. I didn't really care. I do remember, though, that this was Queen of Cups because I usually used her as my signifier. And I saw her as a High Priestess, though. Well, because being a Queen of Cups, with that like watery intuitive element, which I always saw very much in these like glassy, soulful eyes of hers. Sometimes when you see the people in here, they can be deadened faces. Like there are literally dead faces without eyes. And this is actually a mask. I don't know if it was a mask made of a real human face or it's just a lifelike mask. Because I don't know, if you look closer, you could see like ribbons where you would tie that on. So you get like creepy things like that. But this person very much still seems alive. I see like the soul lighting up her eyes from behind there. So with that soulful gaze, with this budding flower centered over her third eye, with this bird that is holding keys as if to unlock secrets, wisdom, the sun and the moon kind of shining that light on what can be hidden and mysterious. I just saw a lot of symbolism in here that I can relate to the High Priestess, and having this crown gives her that prominence. Yes, it makes her look like a queen as well, but the other queens that I've chosen, and actually even the original queens from the deck, at least for the other suits, they were a bit more zoomed out. There's just always something very different about this queen being so zoomed in. So again, I just felt like that close up more on the third eye said High Priestess to me. I could not fit that all in here, so I just abbreviated and then put new numerals at the top. But yeah. So then the Empress, these two I always saw as a pair in the deck, and this was originally Judgment, and this was the World. And neither one of these ever really worked that great for me as those cards originally, but I do regard them as a pair, and so I wanted them to also capture some other pair somewhere in the deck. So I've chosen them for the Empress and the Emperor. And the distinction here being that there is more flora going on here. I just saw more of that sense of like growth and nature and abundance. We've got the animals here, like rats. This one's gnawing on a plant stem, I think, and this one's holding a baby. That kind of signals that sense of fertility. And, you know, her hair is more loose around her face, just kind of falling more naturally around, whereas like she has a more groomed coiffure, if you will, and seems a bit more structured. Like there's a bit more like sort of like whimsy and softness to this face than this. Like this one looks sterner and like looking to the future and making plans, and we don't see as much of this sort of life echoed here. This looks very like calcified, and I just get like a sterner essence from this. And so it's more Emperor to me than this more like free-spirited, creative, nurturing person. I don't remember what one this one's before. This actually might have been the original Emperor, and I have made it the Hierophant because this, it looks like a church window to me. And so I just saw church, made me think of the Hierophant, seeing the two people beneath kind of, they're wearing masks and marching in step with each other. So it's sort of like they're conforming to something and they're marching in lockstep. And so I see the Hierophant not always as a bad thing. Of course, I can see it as like a guide, a teacher. I also more shadowy wise will see it as, conformity and having like to live up to external expectations, societal conventions sort of being like wedged into. And so anyways, I just sort of saw that like, okay, maybe these people aren't necessarily thinking for themselves. They're wearing the masks they're being told to, and they're marching in time to someone else's drum, if that makes any sense. And like I said, just I get that religious component through what looks to be like the remains of a church, perhaps. The Lovers I have kept the same. The Chariot I have kept the same. Strength I have kept the same. I did consider it for other cards, but I do feel like she may be broken, but she's like bound herself back together again, and she's given herself wings, kind of harnessing that inner animalistic strength, but doing so in a way where it's not getting out of control. It's just so that she can like heal and stand tall again, if that makes any sense. So I've just sort of always seen this as someone who might have gotten knocked down, but is getting up again. And wow, did I not want to get Chumbawamba in my head right now? But what can I say? I was in college in the 90s, and that song was really big. Sorry if I've just put it in your head too. For those of you who are too old or too young to know it, don't even look it up. Or do. It was a kind of fun song. Okay. Wow, derailment. Oh gosh, I think this maybe was the Queen of Swords. I could be wrong, but I've decided to make her the Hermit. I always associate like crows and ravens with that like deep intuitive wisdom. And so just seeing this person kind of like taking that time to herself and maybe having to hide behind the mask just to be withdrawn, just a bit removed and in isolation with that sense of introspection and taking this mask off when she's ready to emerge again, and then sharing whatever wisdom she may have to bring from a more enlightened place. Don't remember what this card was before, but I've made it the Wheel of Fortune. We've got like this decay. This bird is standing on ribs, and so things have decayed into the ground, but then we've got this growth emerging from that. And then I see this bird like eating this, and then this will once again decay into the ground, but then when the season comes back around, it renews. So I see that cycle of, well, nature's cycles of decay and renewal. And honestly, that's a theme you see all throughout this deck, really. I do remember Juli picking this one too. It really is a logical choice. I think this was 6 of Pentacles, which, fair. I always did kind of see it as that too with the scales. Though, for lack of a more obvious choice to me, for justice, to have the scales there is just, it's a helpful symbol for me. And I found something else that I thought worked fine for 6 of Pentacles. So I decided to make that switch. This one is a bit of a stretch. Honestly, this was one of the last cards that I found myself with, like deliberating where it could really fit in. And so it kind of got slotted into the Hanged Man slot, which I didn't even have room to write. I just put HM. But it does work for me. I mean, it was sort of like by default, but also I do see this sense of like, okay, I talked about this before, this face that is serving as like a mask, but just the vacant eyes and just that stillness, that pause. I see that sort of time out to just lose focus a bit and find a different perspective. And then we've got these morbid little kitties back here, probably taking turns looking through those eyes. But that in itself, like as weird of an idea as that is, that lends itself to that sense of looking at things from other perspectives, from someone else's viewpoint, or just another viewpoint in general. And so I feel like it's going to work out well enough for me for that sense of, I really feel the sense of stillness and suspension from this card. And so that general atmosphere is what counts most for me as far as that card. Death, I have kept the same. I forget what card this was before. I've decided to make it Temperance because we've got like, I don't know if this is a hornet with its nest. So there's like that risk there of getting stung. But then right above it, we have this bird singing a beautiful melody. So we've got like this sweetness balanced with the sting and kind of like keeping things in just right of a harmony with each other, keeping things in moderation so that, you know, you're not kicking that hornet's nest and getting things riled up. If this bird can just kind of balance just right and hit those right tones that doesn't disrupt this, then we can kind of keep this sense of, you know, perhaps synergistic harmony going on here. So that's my rationale there. This card has only ever looked like the Devil card to me. I think this was a Page of Pentacles, maybe. But like for the Devil, I mean, the goats just screams that for me. I'm old school, you know, associating that imagery with the Devil. But then also how this person has this mask and the way she's pointing at her eyes, it's just sort of like every time this comes up, I just see it as call for like, see things for as they really are. You know, you're kind of hiding behind this mask, but you really need to open your eyes and not look through those, but look through this actual lens and think of the ways in which you're kind of entangled in something that isn't serving you. So I really love this as the Devil card. And it just even like that idea of having that larger central figure and where you usually have like the two people underneath, it just kind of maintains that balance. Kept the Tower the same. I have made this one the Star, and I feel like It obviously could go one of two ways here. Is this woman rescuing these drowning crows, or is she the one who like stuck them with her arrow in the first place? I kind of see it both ways, but I guess I've just made the choice. First of all, there are little stars. There are other cards that have this detail too, but we do have like these little stars hanging down, so that's like a nice little cue. But I have chosen to see it as like, these are crows, something happened and now they're like at risk of drowning, and she is actually coming to like detangle them and to pull this and heal their wounds. And so the water that could be threatening is now becoming something more healing. The moon is the same. Sun is the same. Okay, so yes, I do understand my mythologies. I do know that these are harpies. My mind, though, wants to make them Valkyries. And I know that like Valkyries are not depicted as having bird bodies. I know, they're harpies, but I see them as Valkyries. I see this as like the remnants of knights who have fought in war. And so we have the Valkyries, right, who get to come in and decide who gets to go where in the afterlife. So that's judgment to me in a very traditional, like religious sense. But, you know, they're sort of assessing like, okay, who fought with valor and who didn't, and maybe needs to like look back on what they could have done better and see how they can themselves work to getting to a higher plane in their evolution in some way. So that's judgment for me. And this I have chosen as the world. Could not tell you what it was originally, but we've got a completion of a life cycle here. But then just like with the wheel, you know, we see this like growth. We see this bird that can fly on. It's holding this little banner, a hunting we will go. So that sense of like life moves on. So something's drawn to a close and now we're going to start this new cycle again. We've got this whole like cycle of life going on here. And the way it's holding this banner, it has a very like end of Jurassic Park aspect to me. Like when that banner is falling down over the T-Rex after it's killed the raptors at the end, and so kind of drawing things to its conclusion. So I just get that sense of like, you know, Hollywood ending here. The end of our major arcana. It's how my mind works, you guys. You just gotta roll with it. So I think there's probably other ones that Julia also picked. Honestly, I can't remember which ones we had the same, which ones we didn't, but there are certain ones that do stand out to me as matches, and I do believe she had also picked this because really, that's an Ace of Cups, right? I don't remember what it was before. It was in the cup suit, but it was a different number, and I don't remember what, but that's an Ace to me. This is a 2. Again, I think Juli also picked the same, just by virtue of having these 2 here. This was not even in the cup suit, but there is a cup in the image. And then we've got these 3 cardinals here. So that became an obvious 3 of cups. I don't like see a literal depiction of water here, but just this flower here just gives me the sense of like a lily, a water lily. And I know it's not that, but it gives me that sense. And just a bridge just automatically evokes water running beneath it. And so I just saw this kind of like still moment of, you know, just kind of withdrawing, just taking a moment to oneself. This was a 5 of Pentacles, I think. And it's not that I couldn't see how it could work for that, but like this figure is literally underwater. So it just made sense to switch this to cups because I definitely get a sense of grief or regret from this too, where you're just sort of like submerged and maybe drowning in it. Six of Cups, this is the same. I don't remember who this guy was supposed to be before. It was in the cup suit. maybe it was a court card. I decided to make him the 7 because there's something very like idealized in the portrayal here, like with the light as his back. Like maybe he was the Knight of Cups. I can't remember, but like kind of coming in like he is this knight in shining armor and offering this cup. But like, I get like this too good to be true sense from it though. And the fact that the water or whatever is filling this cup, whether it's wine, it's like it's spilling upward. So there's our sense that like, this is not a realistic depiction. This is not something happening in reality. So that was kind of 7 of Cupsy to me, is like, you know, these fancies you might have, these pie in the sky ideas you might have, but like where they might fall short of reality though, and it might not be the most achievable thing necessarily. Okay, this is where I get more graspy, and I do largely look at these in sequence with each other to explain my rationale here. So bear with me. I'm going to pull out the 9 of Cups as well. Laying these out as I was configuring my little jigsaw with this deck. Seeing how she's like looking over to him, like I feel like this was the fantasy that maybe she got caught up in and it bound her up. I see these like bees or hornets, whatever they are, tying her up. And it's just something where, again, she is wearing a mask of sorts and maybe just trying to pretend to be or to think in some way that it's just not authentic to her anymore, and she's kind of getting untangled. The raven or crow here brings in the cup energy for me because I do associate those birds with that intuitive space. And so even though we have no like literal depiction of cups here, that's how for these two I feel them in that suit. But in any case, you know, she's wearing the mask here and kind of realizing this is something she needs to go forward and move on from. So here in the 9, you see she's got her back to him and she's removed that mask and she looks happier. And this is very celebratory. And I think Juli had picked this one too. And it just kind of does look like she's at a party. And so that like emotional fulfillment of the 9 and kind of getting one's wishes, I just saw this as a progression from this. So if that logic tracks at all with you. And this is one of the default cards. This does not scream 10 of Cups to me, admittedly, but the fact that there is the water element, I wanted it to be in the Cups suit. And, you know, we're not seeing like the typical happy family with the rainbow, but you know what? You're not going to see that in any card in this deck, the way this artwork is and just the shadowy side of things. But what I did see was, whereas like I see the 9 always as like that sense of like personal fulfillment. And then to the 10, opening it up to more of a sense of family, community. Yes, this ant is on its own here, but it's got this ripple effect and this contentment that we can find here. It's rippling out and it's going to affect others and bring them into that joy as well. Going into the court cards now, I think I'm actually going to set those aside for the time being and address them as a whole because, like I said before, I think that was the start of my process, and the way that I selected my courts was very much not just in relation to the suit, but in relation to each other. I wanted a cohesive sense of what the pages looked like and what the knights looked like and the queens and the kings. Anyways, I digress. Get back then to the courts for the cups momentarily. But getting now into the wands. Okay. So like with the cups, you know, I was going through and pretty much like the cards, they had cups in them. I knew I wanted to cluster together there. And then where there weren't cups, like I said, my rationale was, well, that sense of the raven, that brings like a watery, intuitive sense to me, which I can see within that element. And so then for the wands, accordingly, looking for some sort of staff or stick, you know, that could represent that, or just something that is like a fiery energy. And so I made this, whatever it was before. It was originally a wands card though, but I made it the ace because we've just got this single staff being held here, and this person looks like ready to go out. And I guess maybe with the cat too, I got a sense of like a fiery energy, like very active, kind of ready to pounce. Does that make sense? But then the Two of Wands, I kept the same. Three of Wands, I kept in place. This is where I think that some of these were images that were actually made for this deck. So then we've got the 4 here, 5 of Wands, the same. So then one that I modified then was this for the 6 of Wands. Again, I'm blanking on what this card was before, but you know, just seeing this person mounted on the horse evokes the traditional 6 of Wands for me. And we do have, there are swords in here, but then there are also, if you see back here, kind of like spears that evoke the wands for me. But then this horse being like a unicorn and just sort of like adorned in ways that spoke to that sense of like triumph and accomplishment. But I like the shadowy nature of this card too, because this person looks like, you know, she's only just holding on. Like this seems very wobbly, and the horse itself seems kind of frightened. So, you know, it could be something else like where maybe you don't want to let it like, you don't want to rest on your laurels too much, because something else can always come up to kind of trip that up. Maybe someone else is coming in and sabotaging, or you self-sabotage or whatever. And so it kind of gives a more transient aspect to this sense of accomplishment. Like you might have to fall off and then work to get back up on that horse again. So 7 of Wands, I kept the same. 8 of Wands, I think Juli had also picked this one too. It did just make sense to me. This horse just gives that sense of momentum that I see with the 8s. Not 8 numerologically in general, but as far as RWS, 8 of Wands goes, yeah. I saw the 9 here, not a wand, but just this elongation here. It just evoked that for me, and a sense of like, okay, this person's been, well, this person in this deck is probably dead. But I also just see it as like someone who's been knocked down, but they're not giving up without a fight. And it was so interesting to me, again, to go back and watch Juli's video, because I was deliberately starting to tune out the first time I watched it, because I wanted to make some of these choices by myself, like by my own intuition and understanding of the cards. But then going back to hers and hearing like she had that same sense, like I also saw this, and I guess this would make it more of a swords card, and that might be where she placed it within her deck. But that sense of like a voice coming out, I see that here too. And so I guess I just kept it in the wands though, because I just think of like the 9 of Wands, where you just, you know, you've taken some scrapes, you're kind of beaten down, but like you're still standing. And so I just kind of see that as being like that last stand, just not giving up. And even if it's just symbolized by the bird too, there's still some sort of like breath of life here. Yeah. And then 10 of Wands, you know, it's probably not 10 of these, but this sense of wands here, and just this sense of like exhaustion and burden, overwhelm perhaps. Although again, technically she's probably dead. I shouldn't laugh about that. I shouldn't laugh about dead people, but there you go. Okay, so we get in the courts for that. Also set aside. So then the Ace of Swords. This was a different suit before. I want to say that Juli picked this one too, and it ended up again being on the same wavelength with that. Like I see this bird emerging from this cranium, you know, that's the realm of thought to me. And so it just made for a nice, strong ace card. Two of Swords. I think this, gosh, was this the devil before maybe? This might have been the devil before, but you know, I've got the two because we've got like the two kittens represented here. But then, you know, when I think of this being a card of decision, and again, I guess maybe I'm being a little repetitive, like with the Hanged Man, but it's like looking through the mask and seeing things from different perspective. And I can see with the two kittens, like if they pass this back and forth and look through it, it's kind of like being of two minds. So that's just how I've run with it. This was of the sword suit. I want to say maybe it was the 9. I decided to make it the 3 because this body language here evokes that RWS sense of the 3, where maybe there is like heartache and disappointment. But what brings it or keeps it in the realm of air versus water of the heart is this sense of, I don't know how others might look at this, and I don't even know if the guidebook has anything to say about it, but I look at this, I see this as like chunks of snow and ice in her hair. And that maybe in this moment that's making her feel this way, you know, there was just kind of that freeze that happened and caused a bit of paralysis. But now I see it thawing and the chunks breaking off. And so being up in her hair brings it to the mind for me. Like if this is where her mind was like, something has happened, but now it's initiating this growth. Like it might have frozen her temporarily, made her shut down emotionally, what have you. But now as the thaw happens, it's like this person's ready to move on from what this experience was. There's been reflection. There's some thought going on here for where to proceed from now, what was learned through all of this. So, yeah. 4 of Swords, same. 5 of Swords, the same. 6 of Swords, the same. I've decided to make this one the 7 of Swords. I don't know if maybe this was a major arcana card before, but I see, I don't know, 7 of Swords, I see, you know, that person who's sneaking off with the swords. Like this person just looks very sneaky and they're wearing a mask, which could hint at betrayal, you know, and inauthenticity, you know, some sort of truth that's not quite being brought to light. And so, yeah, just between that and this like kind of sneaky look and then getting a little like ensnared, entangled and trying to get away with something, but maybe not succeeding necessarily. I just saw 7 of Swords there. 8 of Swords, I have kept the same. I have made this one the 9 of Swords because yes, dead person, but that eyeball, okay, if this person's not dead, that's just like frozen in fear, right? That like wide awake at night and just like, don't move. There's a bird and bugs on me. That just stands out to me so strongly as like, ooh, fear. And again, this bird's like resting on her head that keeps it in that realm of thought. For me, whatever suit this would have been before, it was not actually the swords, but yes. 10 of Swords, same. So the quartz. So then getting to the Ace of Pentacles. This is the original. I left it the same. And something that helped me get this suit together was this symbolism of the keys. You see it in other cards as well, but that kind of became a cohesive thing for me because, you know, I think of like keys unlocking doors to houses, buildings, like that's a very like physical thing. That's like having the resources, having access to the resources via that key. So that's something that not every card is going to have it, but it informed some of my decisions here. But as we see, this is the original Two of Pentacles. But then this, it had been the Hierophant before, I don't remember, but I've decided to make it the Three of Pentacles because we've got our three birds here, and then we do have that symbolism of the keys again. And I see this as like something, you know, broken, but maybe these birds can be working together to find the like missing pieces here and rebuild that together. I have chosen this birdie to be the Four of Pentacles. I just see this bird having its nest, and this is like its little hoard. It's keeping its keys in here for itself. It's holding on to its resources. This, I believe, was the original Five of Cups. And so again, I feel like what I have put in place for the Five of Cups, which was the original Five of Pentacles, like they both, I feel like, evoked what they were meant to in each suit. But again, that other five with the water actually being depicted, it just made more sense to me in the cups. And then here where we have more of this earthiness of these flowers and like the decay, the petals falling. Yes, I can get grief from this card, but then also this sense of like poverty and lack as these flowers are decaying, and this person seems to be like, you know, praying for salvation, which kind of evokes, you know, the people who walk by that church window. So it works very well for me as a Five of Pentacles too. Okay, so Six of Pentacles here. Man, what was my logic? Well, first of all, we've got the key, which is keeping it in this suit. And actually, this was originally a pentacle as well. I wonder if it was a court card originally. But I just sort of saw that sense of like maybe flow and reciprocity here, like this. Well, I think the hands here, the fingers look like they are in prayer, and that kind of made me think of like the traditional RWS Six of Pentacles, where if you see people who are like kneeling and, you know, asking for money or at least receiving it. And so I kind of get that sense too, kind of like that, you know, lack that you can see in the five. These are also like holding up a support for the bird too, like it's offering up what remains. It's giving this bird the resources it needs to, you know, it's like stringing up something here, you know, maybe it's building its nest. It's kind of rigging something that is going to be useful. So even if it can't really offer anything for this person at this point, you know, it's going the other way. This person, knowingly or not, is offering this bird what it needs to go on. It's not the most direct association I could make, but that's generally where my thoughts went on it. I chose this for Seven of Pentacles. Very creepy dead face here, but there's something this whole deck feels very autumnal, but I think just like really with this too, with like the orange leaves and everything, I just got such a sense of autumn, and it just kind of made me think of the harvest and like, okay, this person is dead. They're not going to be doing anything anytime soon, but just like that sense of just sort of like waiting and patience. You know, this is probably one of the last few cards that I had to slot in, but whatever. It's just, it's working for me. Again, kind of like with that Hanged Man, there is just that sense of like, you know, stillness and like pausing and taking stock. Eight of Pentacles, I kept the same. Nine of Pentacles, I have kept the same. 10 of Pentacles, I have modified whatever this was originally. It was in this suit before, but, you know, again, with this key kind of tying things in. I guess I just saw this as like, you know, she's inherited the keys to the castle, kind of arriving and having all your needs materially met. Even looking at it generationally, like she looks like she's sitting pretty, you know, and she's got a home, she's got somewhere to go, she's got a key to unlock opportunity too, perhaps. And yeah, and that's something that, again, she might have acquired from previous generation, something she can pass down, what have you. Okay, so now to look at my quartz, show some of the logic here. Page of Cups is always a very playful, whimsical figure to me, and so this looked like that. This was not originally that, though. This was in the cup suit, but I don't remember what. It might have been a numbered card, but I've made her the page. I just think she's got like that creative, imaginative whimsy to her. Whereas the knight, this was just a very like romantic looking knight to me, you know, like she's got the Lady Guinevere hair, the Lady Godiva nudity on, not horseback, I guess we're on goat back, but even that makes this knight, you know, a little different. That brings kind of in a bit of fancy, and with the bunny leaping alongside, that sense of like procreation and fertility, I guess, that can make this, you know, kind of like a sexy card, which, you know, I kind of see the Knight of Cups in that sense too, as being like the real romantic. And again, I wanted to see my knights, you know, looking a little older than the page, but still youthful, and also mounted on something, you know, horseback, or in this case, we've got the goat. This was originally the High Priestess, and I have made her my Queen of Cups because I just do. I don't have a great sense of, she didn't leap out to me as the Queen of Cups, but I felt like it was at least a bit more proportional. It always bothered me that that original Queen was so zoomed in relative to the other ones, and yeah, and the fact that like I did, because I was regarding her as High Priestess before and seeing her as like this intuitive person, you know, that suits the Queen for me. So that's where we're keeping her. So the kings, I didn't see like a lot of people that struck me as like super kingly. So for lack of humans, I did find that there were owls in the deck. And so while I don't always love to pair, you know, like a king and queen, it's kind of like an emperor and empress, like we have one human, one animal when you want to regard them as a pair. But I just felt like with my options in this deck, it's sort of what I was left with. Okay, we had 3 owls. And then for lack of a fourth, there was this random ass pheasant where there wasn't any other pheasant in the deck either. So this was where my logic went. Like these became my kings. And so then of these 4, I chose this as the King of Cups. This just seemed like the most caring and compassionate of the kings, you know, tending to, I don't know if she's like a little fairy or what exactly is going on here, or if she's regular size and this is just an enormous bird. I don't know, but there's kind of that like protective stance, but in kind of like a loving, and also just, I don't know, just kind of intuitive nature I see in this too. Because what is this, like a barn owl that kind of evokes that like mystery of the moon and everything for me. And so this came to be my Cups court. So following on them, my wands. Again, I wanted to see a youthful looking page, and while this one is wearing, I think this was originally a knight and is like, you know, suited up at least as far as the helmet goes, but otherwise not wearing armor anywhere else, you know, on the body. And this looks like a kid playing make-believe. This looks like a kid that found an older sibling's helmet and mask and put it on and is playing and is on foot, not mounted on a horse. And so I just get a sense of like playing in my backyard as a kid, you know, with stuff that I found, and just kind of like playing the role and before actually like achieving that role. Then we've got the staff there. This was not in the wand suit originally, but I put it there. There's just something about the coloration too, and like with these ants, I keep seeing like fire ants when I see the ants, and so that gives me fiery wandsy quality. And this is just like a very active card. Whereas we've got this page that's kind of dreamy in that cups realm. This one's taking action. So then this is the original Knight of Wands, which I thought worked just fine. I love the redness of the cardinal lending to that fire element. And here we've got, she's missing her helmet. Kid brother or sister probably took it, jerk. But got the body of armor there. And again, mounted, again, not on a horse, but very knight-like on that bed. So then Queen of Wands. This was neither wand nor a queen. I don't remember what she was. Oh wait, yes I do. I'm lying. I think this was Justice. I didn't get Justice from this. I mean, I could really stretch it, but again, with these ants and these hornets, like very active, in motion, like, and I don't know. She just looks amazing. She looks like so comfortable in her skin and like just taking charge. And we've got this redness of, I can't tell if it's like fabric or flower behind her, that I get a fiery energy. And so she just looks fierce. She's a Queen of Wands for me. And then we get this guy, the pheasant. And this was actually a king. I don't know, I forgot the suit that it was, but just again, the warmth and just the action of this bird. Putting these all together, that was kind of part of it too. Cause like when I was working with the cups, there ended up being like this sort of coolness to the background color palette. And so then as I was like matching these up with each other, there was just this like cohesive sense of like warmth and fire and energy. And so then these became my Wands Court. Okay, this is the one exception that I made for a page actually being mounted on an animal. But this sweet little face, this just looks like a child who found a little birdie. This is like aspirational, right? And with the air, the bird really fit the suit of air very well too. I just think that like she's forward looking, she's forward thinking, she's looking to achieve, she's looking ahead and studying to become that knight. And I can rationalize this until the cows come home, but I just chose her for my page. Still has a much more youthful energy than like this. This is still a young person, but looks a bit more accomplished and like actually like where this could still be just, practicing. This is actually like going out and charging out into the world. So this was a knight, but I think I had to make it of the swords. Maybe it was a wand before, but just the fact that she's got the sword in her hand. I'm pretty sure Juli had picked this one too. I thought more of them were mounted on horses. I totally forgot that they were all different animals, it seems. And again, the bird, very fitting for this suit. Accordingly, those of you out there who identify with the Queen of Swords might use her for your signifier. If you're an air sign, please take no offense at this, that I assigned the harpy to the Queen of Swords. I am looking at this deck overall, right, from like a shadow angle, and that is always how I see the Queen of Swords in shadow. We've got like that sense of air through the bird body, but this is a queen here who is not going to mince words. And then again, with the king, just the skull here with this like fracture in its cranium. I think this was King of Pentacles before, but there's something just a bit airier and more of the mind to me with this one. I think just like the way the owl, like if we're going to compare these two, where we've got more of like the nurturing owl here, just staying still and protecting, like this one's more ready to take flight and moving with time, maybe has foresight and is able to be like very logical and practical in the decision making accordingly, and kind of being more forward thinking. But then getting into our earth suit, I saw this creature that I'm giving this girl credit for creating with whatever she found around her in nature or broken off of other structures. Like, that's resourceful. Like, that she was able to look around. She wanted this friend and she made it happen. And she made it happen with whatever was available. That was just very like hands-on, very practical, resourceful way to be. But then it's still also like very imaginative. Like, she built herself an imaginary friend here. So that still has like a page-like youthful quality to it. But, but just very brilliant, very like hands-on, working with the earth. So then this page, or not page, sorry, I have made this a Knight of Pentacles. Because of the other Knights, I also just see, well, first of all, the other ones are a bit more active looking, where she's a little bit more sedentary and kind of like holding on. And I just see this horse, I guess, is in motion, but just this looks like the more passive of the other Knights. And I kind of see a Knight of Pentacles being that way. Again, just like that rootedness in the earth, and just, we see like the snake here. We see the leaves and vines and flowers kind of winding all around. There's just like a lot of earthiness that's present in here. And then this horse is like kind of in a state of decay too. And that also just speaks to like that physical state of being and nothing really lasting forever. So of all these other Knights, she was just the earthiest to me. I decided to keep the Queen of Pentacles the same, just like this bride. I know this isn't a nest, but the way that these leaves are arranged, I always get this sense of her like emerging from a nest, like mama bird. And here she's got like these birds perched on her. And, I just see that like kind of domestic nurturing quality coming from there. And so then for the king, our last owl, I felt this was the earthiest of the owl, because again, not as active as that swords and not as nurturing as this for cups, but perched and providing for itself or its family. It's got a snake caught in its talons here, so can keep it and its family fed. This also has gears within it, which gives it that much more of a sense of physicality. There's nature, but then this is also a very like man-made component. And again, it makes me just think of like that resourcefulness of this page, of like working with what you've got to get things to operate in that very like physical material way. And so that's how that fell out. So then this was my Pentacles court. So I just want to really quickly, we'll show all the courts in relation to each other across the suit, so that you kind of see where I went with as far as the page, Knight, Queen, and Kings, what I was looking for, but then also just getting a sense of cohesion across my pages. Like with these very like young, innocent looking figures in one way or another, representing their specific suit. Oops. The Knights looking a bit more like teens than children, and all mounted up. Queens. And finally, the kings. Okay, so they couldn't all be owls, but isn't that just life? We can't all be owls. And now this pheasant doesn't have to hang out alone. That's what makes sense to me. This deck makes infinitely more sense to me as a result of this modification. But as I said before, this is not going to stop me from using this as a highly intuitive deck. I'm not going to default. I don't want to look at these titles and default to them with some pre-programmed meaning that's in my head. I very much want to let the images guide me too. I just think that in working with it as a tarot versus just a general oracle, this reconfiguration is helping me still form interpretations within that tarot framework that I so enjoy. So I hope you enjoyed this remotely. Sorry I took a bit of time with it, but yeah, I'm really curious for your thoughts. You know, what you think about this deck in general. I agree pretty much with every opinion I've heard. Like, I understand why people love it. I understand why people might hate it. You know, I'm not going to be anti any position probably that anyone would take on this deck. And I don't know if modifying it is something that you would consider or you think it's absolutely unnecessary. You know, it's another thing of to each their own again. So I just think it's neat that like we can just each individually work with these tools in the way that we can best work with them. I mean, that's what's really at the essence. So I wouldn't tell someone, oh, you have to do this, you have to change it. No, it's a totally workable deck as it is. This is just something I thought was wonderfully fun. Thank you, Julie, for giving me the idea. It had been a while since I'd done something that felt so creative. And so, yeah, that's it then. I'll stop my yammering, and I hope that you are all doing well, and I will see you next time. Bye.